I'm Samantha Davis, 32, and Christmas has always been my favorite holiday until last year. At the family Christmas party, my parents smiled as they clinked their glasses for an announcement. We all decided there'd be no gifts this year, they proclaimed to the room of 30 relatives. Except nobody told me. As everyone exchanged knowing glances, I stood frozen with my car trunk full of carefully wrapped presents. Later, I discovered the truth. They'd organized a secret gift exchange that deliberately excluded me. What followed was a 5-year family secret that would tear us apart and change everything. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, you're going to relate to every moment of this story. I'm sharing my family betrayal experience for the first time, and I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment letting me know if your family has ever pulled something similar, and make sure to subscribe if you want more real family drama stories. Now let's dive into how my picture-perfect family wasn't what it seemed. Growing up in the suburbs of Boston, I truly believed I had the perfect family. Our colonial-style home with the white picket fence was always the gathering spot for holidays, especially Christmas. My father, Michael, a successful small business owner who ran a chain of hardware stores, and my mother, Elizabeth, who taught second grade at the local elementary school, created what I thought was an idyllic childhood for me and my siblings. I'm the middle child between my older brother Ethan, 35, and my younger sister Rebecca, 29. Ethan always seemed to have it together. He married his college sweetheart Allison right after graduation, secured a stable job as an accountant, and gave my parents the grandchildren they desperately wanted, Emily and Jack, now 8 and 6. Rebecca, on the other hand, was always the baby of the family. Pretty, popular, and somehow always managing to get exactly what she wanted. Looking back, I should have seen the signs of favoritism much earlier, but love and loyalty blinded me. Our family Christmas Eve party was legendary in our neighborhood. Mom would spend weeks decorating every inch of the house with festive ornaments, garlands, and twinkling lights. Dad would dress as Santa for the neighborhood kids. The dining room table would groan under the weight of Mom's famous roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, and her special cranberry trifle that she only made once a year. The Davis family Christmas was a tradition that remained constant, even as we all grew up and moved out. For me, those traditions became even more important after my life fell apart. My 7-year marriage to Mark ended when I discovered he'd been having an affair with a coworker. The divorce was finalized just 10 months before that fateful Christmas. To make matters worse, 2 weeks after signing the divorce papers, I was laid off from my marketing job at Horizon Brands during a company-wide restructuring. At 32, I found myself single, unemployed, and forced to move back to my hometown, renting a small apartment just 15 minutes from my parents' house. While I tried to put on a brave face, I was drowning financially. The divorce drained my savings, and the job market was brutal. I took on freelance projects and picked up shifts at a local coffee shop to make ends meet. Despite all this, Christmas remained sacred to me. It represented everything good about family, about sticking together through hard times. I started setting aside money in August, determined to buy thoughtful gifts for everyone despite my circumstances. I spent hours searching for deals online and visiting discount stores, putting together presents that looked far more expensive than they actually were. Meanwhile, Rebecca's life was on the exact opposite trajectory. She had just gotten engaged to Nathan Caldwell, a successful real estate developer whose family had connections throughout New England. Her massive diamond ring seemed to capture every light in the room, and her endless stories about wedding venues and designer dresses became the centerpiece of every family gathering. My parents beamed with pride at every mention of her upcoming marriage into the prestigious Caldwell family. Looking back, I can see how the family dynamic had shifted over the years. Rebecca's achievements were celebrated loudly, while mine were acknowledged with polite nods. When I landed a major client at my previous job, my parents responded with a brief, "That's nice, dear," before turning the conversation back to Rebecca's promotion at her fashion magazine. Ethan seemed to exist in a middle ground, not the golden child, but respected for his stability and for providing grandchildren. A week before Christmas, I called Mom to ask if I could bring anything special for the party. She mentioned they were scaling back this year because times are tight for everyone. I offered to help with cooking or decorating, but she brushed me off, saying everything was handled. Not once did she mention canceling gifts. In fact, she specifically asked if I was still bringing my famous chocolate peppermint cookies, which I always wrapped in small gift boxes for everyone to take home. I spent an entire Sunday baking those cookies, packaging them in festive containers I'd found on clearance months earlier. I was genuinely excited about Christmas that year, perhaps more than I should have been. After a year of chaos and loss, I craved the comfort and stability of family traditions. I needed to feel like I belonged somewhere, that some things remained constant, despite everything else falling apart. The gifts I'd carefully selected and wrapped represented more than just objects. They were my way of showing my family I was still the same, Samantha, still thoughtful and loving despite my circumstances. They were my way of saying, I'm going to be okay. I had no idea that this Christmas would reveal just how tenuous my place in the family truly was. The day of the Christmas party arrived with a light dusting of snow that made the neighborhood look like a scene from a holiday card. I spent the morning arranging my gifts in the trunk of my car, carefully stacking them so none would get crushed. I'd wrapped each one in coordinating red and gold paper, with handwritten name tags and small sprigs of artificial holly I'd found at a craft store. Despite my financial situation, I'd managed to find something meaningful for everyone: a vintage fishing lure for Dad, an antique bookmark for Mom's reading group books, a set of hand-carved wooden blocks for Ethan's kids, a luxurious scarf I'd found on clearance for Allison, and a beautiful journal for Rebecca to plan her wedding. I arrived at my parents' house at 4 p.m., the designated time for family to show up before the neighborhood guests arrived at 6. The house looked as festive as ever, with the 20-foot Christmas tree in the living room window, wreaths on every door, and the collection of nutcrackers that my mother had been building since before I was born. The air smelled of cinnamon and pine, and Bing Crosby crooned from the speakers. For a moment, it felt like any other Christmas. That feeling quickly faded as I carried the first armload of gifts inside. My cousin Jennifer gave me a strange look as I placed them under the tree, which already had several packages beneath it. Aunt Karen raised her eyebrows at Uncle David. My mother glanced over from where she was arranging a tray of appetizers and frowned slightly before returning to her task. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Samantha, my father called as he emerged from the kitchen with a tray of his famous eggnog, just one gift per person this year. Remember? I froze. What do you mean? Nobody told me anything about a limit. Dad exchanged glances with Mom, who suddenly became very interested in straightening a Christmas candle. Well, we discussed scaling back this year, he said vaguely. More relatives arrived, and with each new person, the strange atmosphere intensified. People were whispering, and conversations would abruptly stop when I approached. I noticed wrapped packages being discreetly handed between cousins and aunts in the hallway, away from the tree. Something was definitely going on. Dinner was served at 7:30, and the long dining table was packed with family members. Dad stood to give his annual Christmas toast, champagne flute in hand. Mom rose beside him, linking her arm through his with a bright smile. Before we dig in, Dad announced, Elizabeth and I have a little announcement about this year's Christmas. My mother nodded enthusiastically. As you all know, we decided there'd be no gifts this year. I nearly choked on my water. What? Instead, she continued, we've all enjoyed the Secret Santa exchange so much more, haven't we? One thoughtful gift rather than dozens of obligatory ones, the room murmured in agreement. Secret Santa? What Secret Santa? I sat in stunned silence as everyone else nodded knowingly. My brother Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes, suddenly fascinated by the cranberry sauce. Rebecca smirked slightly before taking a deliberate sip of her wine. I looked around the table at 30 relatives, all of whom apparently knew about this plan except me. Dinner proceeded with awkward conversation. I barely touched my food, trying to process what was happening. After the main course, I escaped to the kitchen under the pretense of helping with dessert. Aunt Karen followed me in. Samantha, dear, she said, patting my arm, Didn't you get the family email about the gift exchange? Rebecca sent it out weeks ago. Everyone was assigned one person to buy for, with a $50 limit. My stomach dropped. No, I said quietly. I didn't get any email. Aunt Karen's expression shifted to pity. Oh dear, that's strange. Everyone was talking about it in the family group chat too. Group chat? What group chat? I cornered Rebecca in the kitchen as she was refilling her wine glass. Why wasn't I included in the Secret Santa email? I demanded, keeping my voice low. Rebecca rolled her eyes. Oh, I thought Mom told you. Besides, she added with a dismissive glance, you probably couldn't afford it anyway. We were trying to be sensitive to your situation. The condescension in her voice made my cheeks burn. I brought gifts for everyone, I said. I've been shopping for months. Well, that's awkward, Rebecca replied, not sounding sorry at all. Maybe you should take them back to the car before the gift exchange starts. We wouldn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. I found my parents in the hallway, pulling them aside for an explanation. Honey, we didn't want you to feel pressured to participate given your financial difficulties, my mother explained, her voice dripping with what sounded like concern but felt like pity. But I already bought the gifts, I insisted. I would have loved to be included in the Secret Santa instead. My father patted my shoulder. It's just a miscommunication, Sam. No big deal. The no big deal became even more painful when Uncle David loudly asked across the living room, Jennifer, did you like the whiskey stones I got you for Secret Santa? Jennifer laughed. Yes, and I hope Ethan enjoys the brewing kit I got him. One by one, people began discussing their Secret Santa assignments, each revelation like a small knife. Not only had I been excluded from receiving a gift, but I'd also been excluded from giving one. I was completely left out of a family tradition that apparently everyone else had participated in. I retreated to my old bedroom, which had long since been converted to a guest room, with no trace of my childhood left. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I heard voices in the hallway. Samantha always makes everything about herself, Rebecca was saying to our mother. It's just like when she showed up at my engagement party in that inappropriate dress. I know, dear, my mother replied. But let's try to keep the peace for Christmas. We don't want another scene like Thanksgiving last year. Another scene? I racked my brain trying to remember what scene I had supposedly caused at Thanksgiving. All I recalled was quietly helping with dishes while Rebecca dominated the conversation with wedding plans. I returned downstairs with a forced smile, making excuses about a headache. For the rest of the evening, I watched as my family enjoyed their perfectly orchestrated Christmas party, complete with inside jokes I wasn't privy to and plans I wasn't included in. My car full of unwanted gifts seemed to mock me from the driveway. Christmas morning arrived with heavy snow and heavier hearts. I considered skipping the family gift opening entirely, but some desperate part of me still wanted to belong, to be part of the tradition. I arrived at my parents' house at 10 a.m., as requested, armed with a batch of cinnamon rolls I'd stayed up late baking, a peace offering of sorts. The living room was arranged as it always had been on Christmas morning. My parents sat on the love seat, my father with his special Christmas coffee mug, a gift I'd given him 5 years earlier. Ethan, Allison, and their children sat on the floor near the tree. Rebecca and her fiancé Nathan occupied the large armchair, her legs draped across his lap, her engagement ring catching the light from the Christmas tree. I took the remaining spot, a wooden chair brought in from the dining room, slightly apart from the cozy family grouping. Well, let's get started, my mother announced cheerfully, as if the previous night's exclusion had never happened. What followed was an hour of pure emotional torture. One by one, family members exchanged their no-gifts. Ethan unwrapped a home brewing kit from Jennifer. Dad received an expensive fishing reel from Uncle David. Mom gasped with delight at the cooking class gift certificate from Aunt Karen. Rebecca squealed over a spa package from Nathan's parents, who had apparently been included in the family's Secret Santa, despite not being family yet. Even the children had been assigned Secret Santas. Emily carefully unwrapped a fairy costume from her grandmother, while Jack received a Lego set from one of the cousins. Everyone had something to open, everyone except me. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, forcing a smile as each person exclaimed over their thoughtful gift. No one acknowledged my empty hands, not even with an apologetic glance. It was as if my exclusion was so natural it didn't warrant mention. After the presents, my mother served her traditional Christmas breakfast, Belgian waffles with whipped cream and strawberries. As we ate, Rebecca took center stage, pulling out a wedding planning binder. "I thought this would be the perfect time to share some of our plans," she announced, as Nathan looked on adoringly. "We've secured the Ocean View Terrace at the Caldwell Resort for June 15th. The Caldwell Resort, owned by Nathan's family, was the most exclusive venue in the state, with a 2-year waiting list for normal people. My parents cooed appropriately. And," Rebecca continued, "we're thinking of a destination bachelor and bachelorette weekend in Miami in April. Mom and Dad, you're obviously invited." My mother clapped her hands. "Oh, how wonderful! Your father and I could use a beach getaway after this cold winter." "Nathan's parents have offered their condo," Rebecca added. "It's got 4 bedrooms, so there's plenty of space for family." The conversation continued, with detailed discussions about flower arrangements, menu tastings, and dress fittings. I sat silently, pushing waffle around my plate, wondering if an invitation to any of these events would be forthcoming for me. It never came. As breakfast wound down, my father cleared his throat. "Before everyone leaves, we have one more announcement. Elizabeth and I have decided to join Rebecca and Nathan, along with the Caldwells, for a ski trip to Aspen next month." "The Caldwells have a wonderful chalet," my mother added. "We'll be gone for 10 days after New Year's." I waited for them to mention my invitation. Surely they wouldn't plan a family vacation without me? But the conversation moved on to logistics and ski rentals, with no mention of my inclusion. After the extended family left, I cornered my parents in the kitchen. "Was I not invited to Aspen on purpose?" I asked directly. My mother looked flustered. "Samantha, don't start. We assumed you couldn't afford to take time off from your jobs." "You could have asked me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "or mentioned it earlier instead of announcing it in front of everyone." "You're overreacting," my father said dismissively. "It's not a family vacation. It's just a trip with the Caldwells to get to know them better before the wedding." "A trip that includes my brother and his family," I pointed out. "Ethan is only coming for the weekend portion," my mother countered. "And the children love skiing." Ethan appeared in the doorway. "Sam, they only invited me because Allison's parents are friends with the Caldwells from their country club. It's more of a business networking thing for Dad." Somehow, Ethan's attempt at mediation only made things worse. So not only was I excluded, but now I was being told it was for my own good, because I wasn't important or connected enough to merit inclusion. "I think I should go," I said quietly. "Samantha, don't be dramatic," my mother sighed. "This is exactly the kind of behavior we were hoping to avoid by not including you in the Secret Santa. You always make everything so difficult." The accusation stung like a physical blow. I gathered my coat and purse without another word. No one followed me to the door. No one called after me as I walked to my car, still full of unwanted gifts. No one texted to apologize as I drove home in tears. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a blur of isolation. I sent a group text to my family saying I needed some space. My mother responded with, "I think that's for the best right now." My father didn't respond at all. Ethan sent a private text saying, "They'll come around," which somehow made me feel worse. Rebecca posted multiple photos of her perfect Christmas with family on social media, carefully cropped to exclude any evidence of my presence. As the new year approached, I made a resolution. I would distance myself from the toxic family dynamic and focus on rebuilding my life. I would no longer chase their approval or inclusion. I would create my own happiness. On January 2nd, I scrolled through my Instagram feed to see photos of my family boarding a private plane to Aspen. My mother, father, brother, sister-in-law, niece, nephew, sister, and future brother-in-law, all smiling in matching winter gear with the Caldwell family. The caption read, "Family vacation with our new extended family. Blessed family first." Family first indeed, just not all family. January crawled by with minimal contact from my family. The occasional text from my mother asking if I was still being sensitive only reinforced my decision to maintain distance. I poured my energy into job hunting, determined to rebuild my career and financial independence. By February, my persistence paid off. I landed a marketing position at Pinnacle Creative, a smaller but innovative firm specializing in digital campaigns. The salary wasn't as high as my previous corporate job, but the work environment was collaborative and supportive. For the first time in months, I felt valued for my contributions. My desk neighbor, Jessica Martinez, quickly became more than a colleague. After catching me eating lunch alone for the third day in a row, she insisted I join her and her friends. Jessica was everything my family wasn't: genuinely interested in my life, supportive without judgment, and refreshingly honest. "Your family excluded you from Christmas and then got mad at you?" Jessica exclaimed when I finally shared my story over happy hour drinks. "That's some serious gaslighting, is it?" "I thought maybe I was overreacting," I admitted. "Sam, they deliberately left you out of a family tradition, then made you feel crazy for being hurt by it. That's textbook emotional manipulation." Jessica's perspective helped me see my family situation more clearly. With her encouragement, I began researching family dynamics and found myself identifying strongly with articles about scapegoating and golden child syndrome. Meanwhile, my sister's wedding planning machine rolled on at full steam. In March, a formal invitation arrived for Rebecca's engagement party at an exclusive downtown venue. The invitation came with a note: "Family members are asked to arrive at 3 p.m. to help set up. The actual event begins at 6 p.m. I debated not attending, but decided it was better to observe the dynamics with my new awareness than continue avoiding the situation. I arrived at 3 p.m. as requested, only to be immediately handed an apron by my mother. "Samantha, good, you're here. You'll be helping serve appetizers and collecting empty glasses. The catering staff is shorthanded." I looked around to see Ethan and Allison arranging centerpieces while chatting with Rebecca's friends. My parents were greeting the Caldwells with champagne flutes. Only I had been assigned server duty. "Isn't this a catered event?" I asked. "Yes, but they need help. Rebecca specifically thought you'd be perfect for this," my mother replied before hurrying off. I spent the engagement party in a black apron, serving mini quiches to my sister's friends while my family socialized. During a rare break, I overheard Rebecca in the hallway, speaking to a group of her bridesmaids. "My sister? Oh, she's had a complete mental breakdown since her divorce. We're all walking on eggshells around her. Did you hear about her Christmas meltdown? She showed up with gifts after we explicitly said, 'No gifts.' Then cried when no one had anything for her. It was so uncomfortable. I stood frozen, tray in hand, as Rebecca completely rewrote the narrative of what had happened. In her version, I was unstable, attention-seeking, and deliberately disruptive. Worse, my family had apparently been spreading this story for months. The engagement party marked a turning point. I stopped trying to correct my family's narrative or defend myself. Instead, I began documenting everything, saving texts, emails, and social media posts that contradicted their revised versions of events. In April, I ran into my cousin Amanda at a local cafe. Unlike most of the extended family who had always been closer to Rebecca, Amanda had distanced herself from family gatherings over the years. "I'm not surprised about Christmas," she confided after I shared my experience. "They did something similar to me years ago. The Davis family has a pattern of choosing a scapegoat." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Haven't you noticed? There's always someone who takes the blame for everything, who gets excluded or belittled. It used to be your Uncle Robert until he moved across the country. Then it was me for a while, until I stopped showing up regularly. Now it's you." Amanda's words sent me digging through old family albums. Looking at holiday photos with new eyes, I noticed a pattern. In almost every group shot, I was positioned at the edge, easily cropped out. In candid photos, I was often caught mid-sentence or with an awkward expression, while others were perfectly posed. The family narrative had been literally framing me as the outsider for years. A chance meeting with Aunt Karen at the grocery store in May revealed even more. After some small talk about Rebecca's upcoming wedding, Karen lowered her voice. "I feel terrible about Christmas, Samantha. I didn't realize you hadn't been told about the Secret Santa." "It's fine," I said automatically. "No, it isn't. And it's not the first time something like this has happened in our family." She hesitated. "Your grandmother Davis was the same way with your father and Uncle Robert. She always favored your father, made Robert feel like he couldn't do anything right. History repeats itself, I suppose." This revelation struck like lightning. The family pattern went back generations. What I was experiencing wasn't personal failure, it was a toxic cycle. By summer, I'd settled into a routine of limited contact with my family. Sunday dinners were declined with plausible excuses. Calls were kept brief and focused on logistics rather than emotions. I built a support network of friends from work, joined a divorce recovery group, and even started dating again, casually and without pressure. Jessica and I became close friends, spending weekends exploring local farmers markets or binge-watching shows. "You seem different," she observed one evening. "More confident." "I feel different," I admitted. "For the first time in my adult life, I'm not measuring my worth against my family's approval." As my personal life improved, my career gained momentum too. A marketing campaign I developed for a local business went viral, bringing positive attention to our firm and earning me a modest bonus. When I shared the news with my parents during a rare phone call, my father responded with, "That's nice. Did you hear Rebecca's wedding dress was featured in Boston Bride magazine?" Some things never changed. But now, instead of feeling diminished, I felt sorry for them. They were missing the opportunity to celebrate all of their children's successes, locked in their pattern of playing favorites. What I didn't realize was that while I was growing stronger and more independent, the foundation of my family's dynamics was beginning to crack. The wedding that had become the center of their universe was about to reveal fault lines none of us could have predicted. I know this story might sound familiar to many of you watching. Family dynamics can be incredibly painful, especially when you realize you're being treated differently than others. If you've been through something similar, drop a comment below. It helps to know we're not alone in these experiences. Now, let's continue with what happened when my sister's wedding weekend finally arrived. Rebecca's wedding was scheduled for the last weekend in September at the Caldwell Resort's Ocean View Terrace. Despite my misgivings, I had agreed to be a bridesmaid, mostly to avoid giving my family another reason to paint me as difficult. The 6 months of wedding preparations had been a masterclass in subtle exclusion. When Rebecca sent out the bridesmaids group email about the bachelorette weekend in Miami, my invitation came with a note. "Given your financial situation, we understand if you can't make it." I scraped together enough money to attend, only to discover upon arrival that I had been assigned to sleep on a pull-out couch in the living room while the other bridesmaids had proper bedrooms. The bridal shower in August featured another humiliating moment when the maid of honor orchestrated a gift-opening ceremony. Each present was displayed and admired, except mine, a handmade photo album documenting Rebecca's life from childhood to engagement. "We'll open this one later," Rebecca had said, setting it aside. It remained unopened as the event concluded. Now, as the wedding weekend arrived, I drove to the Ocean View Terrace with a sense of dread. The resort was as spectacular as expected, perched on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic, with manicured grounds and elegant architecture. My sister had the perfect venue for her perfect day. At check-in, the wedding coordinator consulted her list. Davis. Samantha Davis. "Ah, you'll be in the garden cottage with your great-aunt Mildred and cousin Gertrude." I blinked in surprise. I thought bridesmaids were staying in the resort suites? The coordinator checked her notes again. "The other bridesmaids are in the Ocean View suites. Yes. But this note from the bride indicates you requested budget accommodations." I had requested no such thing, but arguing would only make me look petty. The garden cottage turned out to be a converted groundskeeper's residence, half a mile from the main building, which I would share with 2 elderly relatives I barely knew. Great Aunt Mildred snored loudly, and Cousin Gertrude insisted on keeping the windows open despite the chilly evening air. The rehearsal dinner that night was held in the resort's gourmet restaurant. I took my assigned seat at a table far from the main wedding party, squeezed between distant relatives. From my vantage point, I could see my parents at the head table with Rebecca, Nathan, and his parents. My father stood to give a toast, champagne glass held high. To our perfect daughter, Rebecca. From the day she was born, she has never given us a moment's worry or disappointment. She has always made the right choices, found the right path. Elizabeth and I could not be prouder of the woman she has become, and the wonderful man she has chosen. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, as guests murmured appreciatively. I sat frozen, the words perfect daughter echoing in my mind. The implication was clear. If Rebecca was the perfect daughter, what did that make me? The evening continued with speech after speech, praising Rebecca's achievements, personality, and relationship. Not once did anyone mention my name or acknowledge my presence, despite being her only sister and a bridesmaid. The next morning brought the chaos of wedding day preparations. The bridesmaids gathered in Rebecca's luxury suite for hair and makeup. When I arrived, the makeup artist consulted her schedule. "I don't have you listed for the full package," she said. "Just basic makeup, no special hairstyling." Once again, a decision had been made for me without my input. I sat quietly as the other bridesmaids received elaborate updos and professional makeup while I was given the most minimal treatment. When it came time to dress, I discovered another unpleasant surprise. While the other bridesmaids slipped into size 6 and 8 gowns that fit perfectly, mine, supposedly a size 10 like I had requested, was clearly much smaller. "Are you sure this is the right dress?" I asked the wedding coordinator as I struggled with the zipper. "That's the one labeled for you," she confirmed. "Maybe you've gained weight since the fitting?" I hadn't had a fitting. Rebecca had told me it wasn't necessary since the designer knew standard sizes. Now, as the other bridesmaids waited impatiently, I was forced to squeeze into a dress at least 2 sizes too small, the fabric straining uncomfortably across my back. The final straw came just before the ceremony. The wedding photographer was arranging family photos on the terrace. "Bride's parents here," he directed, positioning my mother and father on either side of Rebecca. "Groom's parents here, bride's brother and his family here." I stepped forward to join the family grouping, but the photographer held up his hand. "We'll do bridesmaids separately later," he said. "But I'm the bride's sister," I explained. "Oh." He looked confused, consulting his shot list. "I don't have you down for the family portraits, just bridesmaids." I looked to my parents for support, but they avoided eye contact. Rebecca was adjusting her veil, seemingly oblivious to the exclusion. "Rebecca," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "did you tell the photographer not to include me in the family photos?" A tense silence fell over the terrace. Rebecca finally looked up, her expression a mixture of irritation and embarrassment. "We need to hurry," she said instead of answering. "We're losing the light." Something inside me snapped. Months of exclusion, gaslighting, and humiliation crystallized in that moment. I turned and walked away from the photo session, heading back to the bridal suite where our personal items were stored. Rebecca followed me, catching up just inside the door. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "You're making a scene." "Why wasn't I included in the family photos?" I demanded. "And why does my dress not fit when everyone else's does? And why am I staying in a cottage when all the other bridesmaids have luxury suites? Can we not do this now?" Rebecca rolled her eyes. "It's my wedding day." "That's exactly why we need to do this now," I insisted. "I've spent months ignoring the way I've been treated, trying not to rock the boat. But I'm done pretending this is normal or acceptable." Rebecca's composed bridal mask slipped for a moment. "Fine, you want the truth? The Christmas thing wasn't a mistake. We all just needed a break from your problems." The baldness of the admission stunned me. "My problems?" "Yes, Samantha, your problems. Your failed marriage, your financial struggles, your constant need for attention and sympathy. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to have a sister who's always in crisis? Who always needs to be the center of attention?" "I've never asked to be the center of attention," I said quietly. I've only asked to be included, to be treated with the same respect as everyone else in the family. Please, Rebecca scoffed. What about when you showed up at my engagement party wearing white? Or when you got drunk at Thanksgiving and made that scene? I wore blue to your engagement party. And I don't even drink alcohol since the medication I'm on doesn't allow it. Rebecca waved her hand dismissively. Whatever. The point is, we're tired of walking on eggshells around you. This wedding is the most important day of my life, and I don't need your drama overshadowing it. The door opened behind us, and my mother entered, her expression tense. What's going on here? Rebecca, everyone's waiting. Samantha is having another meltdown, Rebecca said, her voice dripping with disdain. I'm not having a meltdown, I said calmly. I'm finally standing up for myself. Why was I excluded from the family photos? My mother looked uncomfortable. It wasn't personal, Samantha. The photographer had a limited number of groupings he could do with the available time. That's not true, came a voice from the doorway. Ethan stood there, his expression troubled. I saw the photo list yesterday. Samantha was deliberately left off. A heavy silence fell over the room. My mother looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Rebecca's face flushed with anger. Why are you taking her side? She demanded of Ethan. I'm not taking sides, he replied. I'm just tired of the lies and manipulation. I've watched this happen for years, and I've never said anything because it was easier not to, but I can't stay silent anymore. My father appeared behind Ethan, his face thunderous. What's the holdup? We have guests waiting. Samantha is refusing to participate unless she's included in the family photos, Rebecca said accusingly. Actually, I corrected. I never said that. I just asked why I was excluded. My father sighed heavily. For God's sake, Samantha, can you think about someone besides yourself for once? This is Rebecca's day. That's exactly the problem, Ethan interjected. Everything is always Rebecca's day. Samantha has been treated like an outsider in this family for years, and whenever she objects, she's told she's being selfish. The room fell silent again. I looked at my family, my angry father, my uncomfortable mother, my furious sister, and for the first time, my supportive brother, and made a decision. I'm not going to disrupt your wedding, Rebecca, I said quietly. You're right about one thing, this is your day. But I'm also not going to pretend anymore that the way I've been treated is normal or acceptable. I carefully unpinned my corsage and placed it on the dressing table. I wish you and Nathan every happiness, but I can't be part of this charade anymore. Without waiting for a response, I gathered my purse and wrap. As I reached the door, I turned back one last time. By the way, I never asked for budget accommodations or a smaller dress. Those choices were made for me, just like I was deliberately left out of the Secret Santa at Christmas. I think it's time we all stopped pretending otherwise. I walked out of the Ocean View Terrace with my head held high, past confused guests and startled waitstaff. I drove home in my too-tight bridesmaid dress, stopping only to buy a pint of ice cream and a bottle of sparkling water. That evening, as social media filled with photos of my sister's perfect wedding, family portraits that didn't include me, I sent a group text to my parents and siblings. I'm taking some time away from family gatherings to focus on my mental health and well-being. I love you all, but I need space to process years of being treated as less than. I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. Then I blocked their numbers, poured myself some ice cream, and felt, for the first time in years, at peace with my decision. The weeks following Rebecca's wedding were surprisingly tranquil. Without the constant undercurrent of family drama, I found myself sleeping better, feeling more focused at work, and genuinely enjoying my daily life. Jessica convinced me to try therapy, something I'd considered but always avoided because it felt like admitting defeat. It's not admitting defeat, she insisted over coffee one morning. It's investing in yourself. Athletes have trainers, executives have coaches. Why shouldn't you have a professional to help you navigate this family situation? Dr. Leah Cohen, a therapist specializing in family dynamics, helped me understand that what I'd experienced had a name: family scapegoating. The scapegoat is often the truth teller in the family, she explained during our third session. The person who, consciously or unconsciously, refuses to participate in the family myth. What's the family myth? I ask. It's the story a family tells about itself, who they are, how they function. Your family's myth seems to be that they're perfect, supportive, and normal. Your struggles after your divorce threatened that narrative. Through therapy, I began to understand that my family's treatment of me wasn't about my worth as a person, but about their own insecurities and dysfunction. This realization was both liberating and saddening. In late October, I received an unexpected call from Ethan. I'd unblocked family numbers after a month, though no one had attempted contact until now. "Sam, it's been hell since the wedding," he began without preamble. "Rebecca's furious that you ruined her special day. Mom and Dad are beside themselves trying to maintain the family image. But I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and you're right. You've been treated unfairly for years. Thank you for acknowledging that," I said, surprised by the validation. "It means a lot." "There's something else you should know," Ethan continued, his voice lowering. "Mom and Dad have been financially supporting Rebecca all along, while telling you they couldn't help with your divorce costs because they weren't in a position to give handouts." The revelation stung, but it confirmed what I'd begun to suspect. "How do you know this?" "Dad asked me to look over some investments for him. I noticed large transfers to Rebecca and Nathan, over $70,000 in the past year alone. I absorbed this information silently." Ethan continued, "And there's more. Remember when you were staying with Mom and Dad after your separation, and you thought someone had been going through your emails?" "Yes. My account showed logins from a device I didn't recognize. It was Rebecca. I overheard her telling Nathan about emails between you and your divorce attorney. She was feeding information to Mom and Dad." This betrayal cut deeper than the financial discrepancy. My private communications about the painful end of my marriage had been violated by my own sister. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. Ethan sighed. "Because things are getting worse. Nathan's big real estate development project is failing. Dad invested heavily in it. They remortgaged the house to give Nathan capital. This explained the family's intensified focus on maintaining appearances. If Nathan's business was failing and my parents had tied their financial future to it, the family myth of perfection was under serious threat. In the following weeks, I began my own investigation, starting with financial records. As a joint account holder on an old family vacation fund, I still had access to some bank statements. The transaction history confirmed Ethan's claims. Regular transfers to Rebecca and Nathan, while my requests for temporary help during my job search had been denied. I also discovered, through careful checking of email headers on old family communications, that I had indeed been deliberately left off the Christmas Secret Santa email. The message had been sent to every family member except me. It wasn't an oversight. It was intentional exclusion. Most disturbingly, I found evidence that Rebecca had actively worked to isolate me from family support during my divorce. In an email thread Ethan forwarded to me, she had written to our parents, "Samantha's using this divorce to get attention and financial support. If we keep bailing her out, she'll never stand on her own 2 feet." This from a sister who had been receiving regular loans that were never expected to be repaid. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place in early November when Aunt Karen called me unexpectedly. "Samantha, there's something you should know about your grandmother's inheritance," she said hesitantly. "Your grandmother Davis left each of her grandchildren an equal share of her investment portfolio. You, Ethan, and Rebecca were each supposed to receive approximately $40,000 when you turned 30. I frowned. "I never received any inheritance." "I thought as much," Karen sighed. "Your father was the executor. He told the family he had distributed the funds according to the will. But I always wondered. You never mentioned it, even when you were struggling after your divorce." I had never received a penny of my inheritance. Given what I now knew about my parents' financial support of Rebecca and Nathan, it wasn't hard to guess where my portion had gone. As Thanksgiving approached, I received a text from my mother. "We expect you for Thanksgiving dinner at 2 p.m. Time to put the wedding incident behind us and be a family again." No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. just an expectation that I would return to the fold and resume my role as family scapegoat. A week later, my father called with an unusually warm greeting. "Samantha, darling, it's been too long. We miss you. How are things going at your new job?" After a few minutes of superficial catching up, he got to the point. "Listen, I was thinking maybe we could get together before Thanksgiving, just you and me. There's something important I'd like to discuss with you." I agreed to meet him for coffee, suspecting what was coming. Dr. Cohen had helped me prepare for this eventuality. When dysfunctional families feel threatened, she'd explained, they often try to pull the scapegoat back in. They need someone to blame for their problems. Sure enough, my father's important discussion turned out to be financial. Nathan's development project has hit some temporary setbacks, he explained, stirring his coffee nervously. "Your mother and I are in a bit of a cash flow situation." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said neutrally. "The thing is, Samantha, we know you recently received that bonus at work." He smiled ingratiatingly. "We were hoping you might consider a short-term loan to help family out, just until Nathan's project gets back on track." The audacity was breathtaking. After years of prioritizing Rebecca, dismissing my needs, and apparently redirecting my inheritance, they were now asking me for money. "I'll think about it," I said noncommittally, not ready to confront him with what I knew. As I drove home, I made a decision. I would attend the family Thanksgiving, not to resume my role as scapegoat, but to finally confront the toxic dynamic with all the evidence I had gathered. Dr. Cohen helped me prepare, emphasizing the importance of staying calm and focused on facts rather than emotions. "Your goal isn't to punish them," she reminded me. "It's to establish boundaries and advocate for fair treatment." I spent the week before Thanksgiving organizing my evidence. Bank statements showing the disparity in family financial support, emails proving my deliberate exclusion from family events, and documentation of the inheritance I should have received. I prepared a clear, concise presentation of the facts, along with specific conditions for moving forward: family therapy, a formal acknowledgement of past behavior, and financial transparency. Ethan called the day before Thanksgiving with a warning. "They're planning to ask you for a substantial loan at dinner tomorrow. Dad's business is in worse shape than I thought, and Nathan's project is on the verge of collapse." "I know," I replied. "Dad already hinted at it. Don't worry, I'm prepared." "What are you going to do?" Ethan asked. "I'm going to tell the truth," I said. "All of it. And then I'm going to offer them a choice: continue with the dysfunctional pattern or work together to create something healthier." As I hung up, I felt strangely calm. For years, I had feared confrontation, dreaded family conflict, and done everything possible to maintain peace. Now, armed with evidence and a clear understanding of the dynamics at play, I was ready to face whatever came next. The family that had excluded me from Christmas was about to discover that I had spent the year unwrapping the truth. I hope my story resonates with those of you who have felt isolated or scapegoated in your own families. Sometimes the hardest part is realizing you're not crazy for feeling mistreated. If you've been through similar family dynamics, share your experience in the comments. I found that connecting with others who understood was incredibly healing. Now, let's see what happened when I finally confronted my family with the truth. Almost exactly 1 year after the Secret Santa debacle, I found myself driving back to my parents' house for Christmas Eve. The traditional family party had been scaled back significantly, another sign of the family's financial strain. Instead of the usual 30-plus relatives, only immediate family would be attending: my parents, Ethan and his family, Rebecca and Nathan, and me. The house looked different, too. The elaborate exterior lighting display had been reduced to a single modest wreath on the door. Inside, the 20-foot Christmas tree had been replaced by a smaller artificial one with fewer ornaments. The dining room table, normally groaning with lavish dishes, held a simple ham and basic side dishes. My mother greeted me with an awkward hug. "Samantha, so glad you could make it. Don't you look professional?" Her eyes took in my tailored blazer and sleek haircut, visible signs of my improving financial situation. My father's greeting was more effusive. "There's my girl," he boomed, clapping me on the shoulder. "We've missed you around here, haven't we, Elizabeth?" My mother nodded vaguely before hurrying back to the kitchen. I noticed Rebecca watching from the living room doorway, her expression guarded. Nathan stood beside her, his normally confident posture noticeably diminished. Ethan arrived with Allison and the children, greeting me with a genuine hug. "Good to see you, Sam," he whispered. "Are you ready for this?" I nodded, patting the slim portfolio in my bag. As ready as I'll ever be. Dinner was a tense affair. My mother made several attempts at light conversation, asking about my job and apartment with forced cheerfulness. My father told strained jokes that fell flat. Rebecca remained mostly silent, picking at her food, while Nathan kept checking his phone under the table. Only Ethan's children, oblivious to the adult tension, chattered normally about school and friends. As dessert was served, store-bought pie instead of my mother's usual homemade specialties, my father cleared his throat. "Well, since we're all here together, there's something important we need to discuss as a family." "Here it comes," I thought. "As some of you may know," he continued, "we've had some temporary financial setbacks. Nothing serious," he hastened to add. "Just a cash flow issue until Nathan's Riverside project gets back on track." Nathan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Rebecca stared intently at her pie. "The thing is," my father went on, "we need a short-term loan to tide us over. Just family helping family." His eyes focused on me. "Samantha, we know you've been doing well at your new job. We were hoping you might be in a position to help out." The table fell silent. Everyone was looking at me now. My father hopeful, my mother anxious, Rebecca resentful, Nathan embarrassed, and Ethan watchful. "Before I respond to that," I said calmly, reaching for my bag, "I'd like to discuss a few things I've discovered over the past year." "Is this really necessary right now?" my mother interrupted. "It's Christmas Eve." "Yes, it is necessary," I replied. "And Christmas Eve seems appropriate, given that last Christmas was when I first realized how I'm actually regarded in this family." I took out my portfolio and removed a neatly organized set of documents. Let's start with the facts. Last Christmas, I was deliberately excluded from the family Secret Santa. It wasn't an oversight or miscommunication. I was intentionally left off the email list. I slid a printed copy of the email header across the table, showing the distribution list with every family member except me. "That was a simple mistake," my mother protested weakly. "No, it wasn't," I countered, "and it was just one example of a pattern that's existed for years." I turned to my father. "Dad, you've always told me you couldn't help me financially because you don't believe in handouts. Yet over the past 2 years, you've given Rebecca and Nathan over $70,000. I placed bank statements on the table showing the regular transfers. Rebecca's face flushed. "That was for the wedding and investments. It's completely different." "Is it?" I asked. "Because when I needed temporary help after losing my job, not a handout, just a loan to cover rent until I found new employment, I was told the family had no money to spare." Nathan was staring at the bank statements, his expression darkening as he realized just how much his in-laws had invested in him. "And then there's the matter of Grandma Davis's inheritance," I continued. "Aunt Karen told me about the money Grandma left for each of her grandchildren when they turned 30. My father's face paled. "Karen had no right to discuss that with you. Actually, as a beneficiary, I had every right to know. But I never received my $40,000. "Where did it go, Dad?" The silence that followed was deafening. My mother looked away, unable to meet my eyes. My father's jaw worked silently, as if trying to formulate a response that wouldn't incriminate him. "It went into the Riverside project, didn't it?" I pressed. "Along with the remortgage money from this house?" Nathan abruptly stood up. "You told me that investment came from your retirement fund," he said to my father, his voice tight with anger. "You never mentioned it was Samantha's inheritance." "Nathan, sit down," Rebecca hissed. "This isn't the time." "When is the time, Rebecca?" I asked. "When the project completely fails? When Mom and Dad lose their house? When were you planning to tell them that Nathan's company is on the verge of bankruptcy?" Nathan's head snapped toward me. How did you know that? I did my research, I replied. The Riverside project has been under investigation by the State Environmental Agency for months. The permits have been revoked pending review. The project is dead, Nathan, and my family's financial future died with it. The room erupted into chaos. Nathan stormed out. Rebecca burst into tears. My mother began frantically questioning my father about the house mortgage, and Ethan hurriedly took his children upstairs away from the drama. When the initial explosion subsided, I continued calmly. I'm not here to punish anyone or to gloat. I'm here because, despite everything, you're still my family, and I care what happens to you. My father looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Then you'll help with the loan? I'll help, I confirmed, but not with a blank check. I have conditions. I laid out my terms. Family therapy to address the dysfunctional dynamics. A formal acknowledgement of how I'd been treated. Complete financial transparency going forward. And a plan to restore my inheritance, even if it took years. And one more thing, I added. I want us to start being honest with each other. No more family myths, no more scapegoating, no more golden child. Just real people with real flaws trying to do better. My mother was crying quietly now, her perfect family image shattered beyond repair. My father looked defeated, the weight of his financial missteps and favoritism finally catching up to him. Rebecca, surprisingly, was the first to respond. I knew the project was in trouble, she admitted. I've been selling my jewelry to make the mortgage payments on our condo. Nathan didn't want anyone to know. This vulnerability, this crack in her perfect facade, was something I'd never seen before from my sister. Why didn't you ask for help? I asked. After the way I treated you, she said bitterly. Would you have helped me? Yes, I said simply. Because that's what family is supposed to do. Help each other when they're struggling, without judgment or conditions. Rebecca looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly, a glimmer of understanding passing between us. Ethan returned to the dining room, having settled his children with a movie upstairs. So what happens now? He asked, looking around at our fractured family. My father rubbed his face wearily. We accept Samantha's terms. We get help. We try to fix this mess I've created. Not just you, Dad, I said gently. We all contributed to this dynamic in different ways, and we can all contribute to changing it. As the evening wound down, Nathan eventually returned, his anger replaced by resignation. Plans were made for an emergency family meeting after Christmas to discuss finances openly. My mother tentatively suggested looking into family therapy options. It wasn't a perfect resolution, nothing in real life ever is, but it was a start. Before I left, I handed my father a check, not for the full amount he'd hoped for, but enough to prevent any immediate financial catastrophe. This is a loan, not a gift, I said firmly. We'll draw up proper terms after the holidays. He nodded, looking both grateful and ashamed. I'm sorry, Samantha, for everything. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever received from him. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the year that had passed since last Christmas. I had lost my place as the family scapegoat, but gained something far more valuable: self-respect, boundaries, and the beginnings of authentic relationships based on truth rather than comfortable lies. The Davis family would never be perfect, but perhaps, with time and work, we could be real, and that would be the greatest gift of all. 6 months after that fateful Christmas confrontation, our family gathered once again, this time in the comfortable meeting room of Dr. Marissa Santos, the family therapist we'd been seeing bi-weekly since January. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been sessions filled with tears, accusations, and painful revelations. There had been weeks when it seemed like the damage was too deep to repair. But slowly, painstakingly, we had begun to build something new from the ashes of our dysfunctional past. My parents had sold their too-large colonial house, moving into a modest condo that better suited their retirement needs and financial situation. The sale had provided enough capital to stabilize their finances and begin a repayment plan for my inheritance. It had been humbling for them, particularly my mother, who had derived much of her identity from hosting perfect gatherings in her perfect home. But as she admitted in a recent therapy session, there's a certain freedom in letting go of appearances. Nathan's business had indeed collapsed completely. The Riverside project had been permanently shelved due to environmental violations, and his company had filed for bankruptcy protection. Rebecca and Nathan had sold their luxury condo, moving into a rental apartment while Nathan rebuilt his career from scratch, this time with a focus on sustainable, environmentally conscious developments on a smaller scale. The failure of Nathan's business and the resulting financial strain had put significant pressure on Rebecca's marriage. For a while, it seemed they might not survive the transition from power couple to struggling young family. But the crisis had revealed a strength in their relationship that surprised everyone, including themselves. Rebecca had taken a job as a marketing coordinator, ironically, at a competitor of my own firm, and discovered she had a genuine talent for the work. "I always defined myself by what I had, not what I could do," she told me over coffee one afternoon. Our first real sister outing in years. "It's strange, but I think I like myself better now." My relationship with Rebecca remained complicated. Years of competition and resentment couldn't be erased overnight, but we were learning to see each other as allies rather than rivals. In a particularly breakthrough therapy session, Rebecca had broken down completely. "I was always so jealous of you," she admitted through tears. "You were smarter, more talented. I felt like I had to tear you down to build myself up." It wasn't a complete resolution. Real life rarely provides those, but it was a start. Ethan had emerged as the family mediator, a role that suited his balanced perspective and natural diplomacy. His wife Allison, long uncomfortable with the family dynamics, but unsure how to address them, had become one of my strongest supporters. Their children, now regular visitors to my apartment for movie nights and baking sessions, provided a reminder of why we were all working so hard to heal the family wounds. They deserved better than to inherit our toxic patterns. As for me, my career continued to flourish. The viral marketing campaign had led to a promotion, and I was now heading a small creative team at Pinnacle. Jessica remained my closest friend, a relationship untainted by the family drama that had colored so many of my interactions. I had even started dating again, cautiously, but with an openness I hadn't felt capable of before. My apartment had become the gathering place for what I thought of as my chosen family, friends, supportive colleagues, and the relatives who had proven themselves worthy of trust. I hosted monthly dinner parties where the only requirement was authenticity. No perfect facades, no hidden agendas, just real people sharing real connection. The approach of Christmas brought mixed emotions. Dr. Santos suggested we create new traditions rather than trying to recreate the old ones with their painful associations. After much discussion, we decided to hold a small, simple celebration at my apartment on Christmas Eve. No elaborate decorations, no excessive gifts, just family being present with each other. The morning of Christmas Eve, I woke early to prepare. As I brewed coffee, I thought about how much had changed in a year. The doorbell rang at 10 a.m. Jessica, arriving early to help with preparations. "So, the whole family's really coming?" she asked as she arranged a veggie platter. "Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied. "It won't be perfect, but I think it will be real." They arrived in stages. Ethan and his family first, bearing homemade cookies and hand-drawn cards from the children. My parents next, my father carrying a small bag of modest gifts, my mother clutching a photo album I hadn't seen before. Rebecca and Nathan came last, their faces showing the strain of their financial struggles but also a new kind of resilience. Dinner was simple but delicious. A potluck, where everyone contributed something. The conversation flowed more easily than I had dared hope, focusing on future plans rather than past grievances. When it came time to exchange gifts, there was an initial awkwardness, last Christmas's wounds still fresh in everyone's mind. "I have a suggestion," I said. "Instead of material gifts, what if we each share something we're grateful for about each person here?" The relief in the room was palpable. One by one, We went around the circle, offering genuine words of appreciation to each family member. My father's voice cracked as he told me how proud he was of my strength and integrity. My mother showed me the photo album she'd brought, pictures she had collected of me throughout the years, moments I thought had gone unnoticed or unappreciated. Rebecca's gift to me was perhaps the most meaningful. A letter apologizing for years of competition and sabotage, acknowledging the pain she had caused, and expressing hope for a new kind of sisterhood. It wasn't perfect, and it couldn't erase the past, but it was honest in a way our relationship had never been before. After dinner, as we sat around my small living room sipping hot chocolate, my mother asked hesitantly, "Will we do this again next year?" "I'd like that," I said. "But with one addition. I think we should each invite someone who might need family during the holidays. A friend, a colleague, someone who might otherwise be alone. Our family has been too closed for too long." The suggestion was met with thoughtful nods. This, too, was new. The willingness to expand our circle, to define family by love and choice rather than just blood. As the evening wound down and people gathered their coats to leave, my father pulled me aside. "I never thought I'd say this," he admitted, "but our family is better now than it was before. More real. Thank you for having the courage to break the pattern." I hugged him, a genuine embrace without the tension that had characterized our relationship for so long. "We're still working on it," I reminded him, "one day at a time." After everyone left, I stood in my quiet apartment, looking at the modest Christmas tree with its mismatched ornaments, each one brought by a family member as a symbol of our new beginning. The perfect Davis family Christmas was a thing of the past, but in its place was something far more valuable: authentic connection, painful but necessary honesty, and the slow rebuilding of trust. The inheritance I had lost, and was gradually reclaiming, was more than just money. It was my place in the family, not as the scapegoat or the outsider, but as an equal, valued member. The journey wasn't over. There would be setbacks and struggles ahead as we continued to unlearn decades of dysfunctional patterns. But for the first time, I felt hopeful that we were moving in the right direction. As I placed the last dishes in the dishwasher, my phone pinged with a text from Rebecca. "Thank you for tonight. For the first time in years, I feel like I have a sister again." I smiled as I typed my reply. "Me too. Merry Christmas, Becca." Some family traditions deserve to end. Others can be transformed into something healthier. And sometimes, the most valuable tradition of all is simply being present. Not perfect, not performing, just authentically, imperfectly present with the people who share your history, and hopefully, your future. That Christmas Eve in my apartment wasn't just a holiday gathering. It was the beginning of a new family story, one written together, with all our voices included. And that was the greatest gift any of us could have received. I know many of you watching have experienced family dynamics similar to what I've shared. Has anyone ever stood up to toxic patterns in your family? What happened when you did? The journey to healthier relationships isn't easy, but it's worth it. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real family stories. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is setting boundaries and speaking your truth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to create the authentic relationships you deserve, whether with your blood family or your chosen one. Share your own family redemption stories in the comments below.